The emergency broadcast cut through every screen, every speaker, every device on Earth at exactly 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. No one had authorized it. No one could stop it. Dr. Sarah Chen jerked awake in her cramped apartment above the Shanghai Communications Center, her tablet glowing with an impossible message. The same message that was burning across billions of screens worldwide at that very moment. Urgent galactic notice. Species, classification, required. Planet, Earth 3. Dominant species, unknown. Threat level, pending assessment. Time. To compliance, 72 hours. Failure to respond will result in planetary sterilization. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the coordinates that followed. They pointed to a location in space that, according to every instrument humanity possessed, was completely empty. Across the globe, similar scenes played out. In Moscow, General Viktor Petrov stared at his command center's main screen in disbelief. In New York, 12-year-old Marcus Washington watched from his bedroom window as his neighbors poured into the streets, phones raised, all displaying the same impossible message. The signal had bypassed every firewall, every security protocol, every defense system humanity had ever built. It simply existed everywhere all at once. This has to be a hoax, Sarah whispered to herself, but her instruments told a different story. The signal's origin point showed massive energy readings. Readings that suggested something the size of a small moon had suddenly appeared in what had been empty space just hours before. Her phone rang. The caller ID showed her supervisor, Director Liu. "Chen, get down here now." His voice cracked through the speaker. "We've got readings that don't make sense. Something big just showed up in the outer system, and it's moving toward us." Sarah grabbed her jacket and ran for the elevator. As the doors closed, she caught a glimpse of her own reflection. Wide eyes, pale face, the look of someone who had just realized that humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and that whoever had found them wasn't here to welcome them to the galactic community. The elevator descended, but Sarah's stomach felt like it was still rising. 72 hours. That was all the time they had to prove that humanity deserved to exist. She just had no idea what they were supposed to prove. Chapter 2. The Impossible Choice. 47 hours after the signal, the world's greatest minds gathered in an emergency session at the United Nations building in New York. The meeting had been called in secret, but secrets were hard to keep when every major city showed the same countdown timer floating above its skyline. A timer that no human technology could explain or remove. Sarah sat between Dr. James Okafor, a physicist from Lagos, and Commander Elena Vasquez from the International Space Station. The circular table held 36 people, scientists, military leaders, diplomats, and a few others, whose presence suggested that governments had been preparing for this possibility longer than they'd admitted. "The object has moved closer," announced General Petrov, his thick accent cutting through the tension. "Our best telescopes show it's artificial, clearly constructed, and He paused, consulting his tablet. Approximately 400 kilometers long. A collective intake of breath filled the room. That's larger than the International Space Station by a factor of... Dr. Okafor began calculating aloud. 2,000, Sarah finished quietly. It's 2,000 times larger than the ISS. President Martinez, representing the hosting nation, leaned forward. "Dr. Chen, your team has been analyzing the signal. What exactly are they asking us to prove?" Sarah stood, her legs unsteady. She'd barely slept since receiving the transmission, and the weight of 7 billion lives pressed on her shoulders. "The message is complex," she began, activating the room's holographic display. The alien text appeared, shifting and changing as their translation algorithms worked in real time. "But from what we can understand, there's some kind of galactic community. They classify species based on their potential." "Potential for what?" asked Commander Vasquez. "We think it's about survival, innovation under pressure. They're looking for species that can..." Sarah hesitated. The translation still. felt uncertain, that can transcend their limitations when faced with extinction. So they threatened to kill us to see if we're worth keeping alive? General Petrov's voice carried a mix of outrage and dark humor. It appears so. President Martinez rubbed his temples. What kind of proof do they want? That's the problem, Sarah admitted. The message doesn't specify. It just says we need to demonstrate our species classification within the remaining time. Dr. Okafor stood. I've been thinking about this. Look at human history. Every major leap forward came when we faced extinction. The agricultural revolution, during the last ice age, the space race during the Cold War, the climate technology breakthroughs when we faced environmental collapse. You're suggesting they want to see us innovate? Asked Commander Vasquez. I'm suggesting they want to see us become something more than what we are. Through the conference room's windows, Sarah could see crowds gathering in the streets below. The countdown timer showed 25 hours and 14 minutes. Street vendors sold last-day merchandise. Some people prayed. Others partied. Most just looked up at the sky, waiting. There's something else, Sarah said quietly. Our deep space monitors picked up other signals. Fragments of similar messages, but older. Much older. The room fell silent. How much older? President Martinez asked. Some date back thousands of years. Others, millions. Sarah's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I think we're not the first species they've tested. And the others? Dr. Okafor's question hung in the air. Sarah didn't need to answer. The empty space where those civilizations used to be was answer enough. Commander Vasquez suddenly stood, her face pale. I'm getting reports from the ISS. The object, it's not just moving closer. It's changing, growing, like it's building something. Through the conference room speakers, a new voice crackled to life. The voice of mission control. All stations. All stations. We have visual confirmation. The object is constructing what appears to be a weapon system. Estimated completion time, 24 hours. The room erupted in panicked voices, but Sarah heard none of them. She was staring at her tablet, where a new line of alien text had just appeared. Text that their computers were struggling to translate. When the translation finally stabilized, her blood ran cold. Your species shows promise. The test will now intensify. Chapter 3. The Awakening. With 18 hours remaining, something unprecedented happened. It started in the research labs. Scientists around the world began reporting the same phenomenon. Experiments that had failed for years suddenly working. Theories that had been stuck in development achieving breakthrough after breakthrough. In Shanghai, Sarah's team successfully created a stable fusion reaction using materials they'd assembled from their coffee machine and spare electronics. This is impossible, muttered Dr. Kim, one of Sarah's junior researchers, as she stared at the readings. We're generating more energy than we're putting in, and the reaction is completely stable. Meanwhile, in Lagos, Dr. Okafor's team had somehow managed to create a material that bent light around itself, achieving practical invisibility with nothing more than crystallized sand and electromagnetic fields. Commander Vasquez's voice crackled. Through the emergency communication network from the space station. Ground control, we're seeing something incredible up here. The crew I don't know how to explain it. We've figured out how to modify our solar panels to generate artificial gravity. We don't understand how we knew how to do it, but it's working. Around the world, similar reports flooded in. A teenager in Mumbai solved a decades-old problem in quantum computing using her gaming setup. A farmer in Iowa discovered that his crops could be modified to grow in any environment, including the vacuum of space, simply by talking to them in a specific pattern of tones. Sarah paced her laboratory, her mind racing. It's like the human brain is suddenly accessing information it never had before, she said to her team. But where is this knowledge coming from? The answer came from an unexpected source. Marcus Washington, the 12-year-old who had first seen the message from his bedroom window, called into the emergency hotline that had been set up for civilian reports. Ma'am, he said to the operator, I think I know what's happening. My grandma used to tell stories about the old days, before people forgot how to really think. She said humans used to be able to do things that seemed impossible, but we got comfortable and stopped trying. The operator, trained to handle panic calls, paused. Something in the boy's voice made her listen. She said that when people get scared enough, when they have to save everything they love, that's when they remember what they really are. The call was forwarded up the chain of command, eventually reaching Sarah's team in Shanghai. "Get me that kid on the line," Sarah demanded. When Marcus's young voice came through the speakers, Sarah asked, "What exactly did your grandmother tell you?" "She said humans aren't really human yet. She said we're like caterpillars that think we're supposed to stay caterpillars forever, but really we're meant to become butterflies. She said it would take something really scary to make us remember how to change." Sarah's tablet chimed with an incoming message. The alien text appeared, and this time the translation was crystal clear. "Preliminary assessment complete. Species. Shows activation potential. Final test commencing." Through the laboratory windows, Sarah could see something that made her heart stop. The massive alien structure in space had changed again, but this time it wasn't building weapons. It was beautiful, crystalline. Spires extended from its hull, pulsing with soft light. The entire structure had transformed into something that looked less like a warship and more like a flower blooming in the darkness of space. "Dr. Chen." Dr. Kim's voice was filled with wonder. "Our instruments are showing that the alien structure, it's broadcasting something, not a signal, knowledge, raw information directly into human neural networks." Sarah felt it then, a warm sensation in her mind, like doors opening in rooms she'd never known existed. Around the world, 7 billion humans experienced the same moment of expansion. And in that moment, humanity began to understand what they were truly capable of. But with 13 hours left on the countdown, they also realized that the real test was just beginning. Chapter 4. The transformation. 12 hours remained when the impossible became routine. In Beijing, construction workers were building structures that defied physics, using materials that shouldn't have existed but were, somehow being assembled from ordinary concrete and steel. The buildings grew upward like living things, reshaping themselves as they rose. In São Paulo, a group of street musicians discovered that their instruments could generate frequencies that healed injuries instantly. Hospitals across the city emptied as people walked out completely cured of diseases that had plagued them for years. In Cairo, archaeologists found that they could suddenly read hieroglyphics that had puzzled scholars for centuries, not because they had learned to translate them, but because they remembered when they had written them. Sarah stood in her laboratory, watching her team work with abilities they had never possessed before. Dr. Kim was manipulating matter at the molecular level, using nothing but focused thought. Dr. Park had discovered how to communicate with the alien structure directly, exchanging concepts that human language had never contained. "Sarah," Dr. Park called out, "they're responding to our contact attempts. I think I understand what this is about. Tell me." "It's not a test of our technology or our intelligence. It's a test of our growth. Every species reaches a point where they either evolve beyond their original limitations or they destroy themselves trying to stay the same." Sarah nodded. The pattern was becoming clear. The countdown isn't a deadline for us to prove ourselves. It's a countdown to when we have to choose. Choose what? Before Sarah could answer, every screen in the laboratory displayed the same message, not in alien text this time, but in perfect, clear human language. Species, humanity. Classification, transitional. You have 11 hours to complete your metamorphosis. Those who choose to evolve will join the Galactic Collective. Those who choose to remain unchanged will be relocated to a protected reservation world. All must choose. None may choose for others. The meaning hit Sarah like a physical blow. Humanity was being split into two groups, those ready to become something greater, and those who wanted to remain as they had always been. Around the world, the same realization was dawning. Families were discovering that parents and children might choose different paths. Friends were finding that their visions of the future no longer aligned. Entire nations were dividing as people faced the most fundamental choice in human history. President Martinez's voice came through the emergency broadcast system. Citizens of Earth, we have received additional information from our visitors. The choice before us is individual, not collective. Each person must decide for themselves whether to accept the transformation that will allow us to join the galactic community, or to remain human as we understand it today. Sarah looked around her laboratory. Half her team was glowing with a soft inner light, the sign of those who were embracing the change. The other half looked exactly as they always had, but their eyes held a determined peace. Dr. Chen. Dr. Kim's voice had changed, carrying harmonics that hadn't been there before. I can see it now. The choice isn't about abandoning humanity. It's about completing it. Dr. Park, still unchanged, smiled. And there's nothing wrong with those of us who want to stay as we are. The galaxy has room for both. Through the laboratory windows, Sarah could see the same scene playing out across Shanghai. Some people were transforming, their bodies adapting to capabilities beyond current human limitations. Others remained as they were, but with a new understanding of their place in a universe much larger than they had imagined. The alien structure in space pulsed brighter, and Sarah understood that it was no longer a test facility. It was an ark, ready to carry those who chose transformation to their new home among the stars. At the same time, scanning beams were identifying suitable worlds for those who chose to remain traditionally human, worlds where they could develop at their own pace without the pressure of cosmic evolution. With 10 hours remaining, Sarah faced her own choice. She looked at her hands that could now manipulate energy at the quantum level. She felt her mind expanded to perceive dimensions of reality she had never imagined. The transformation was already happening to her, had been happening since the moment she chose to embrace the unknown rather than fear it. But she also understood those who made the other choice. There was beauty in being human as humans had always been. There was value in growing slowly and discovering things through struggle and time. There's no wrong choice, is there? She said aloud. The alien structure pulsed once, gently, and Sarah knew that was her answer. Both paths led to something wonderful. Both paths honored what humanity could become. The only tragedy would be in not choosing at all. Epilogue: Two Futures. 5 years later, Sarah floated in the crystalline chamber of the exploration vessel. New Horizon, her consciousness, simultaneously present in dozens of locations across the galaxy. Around her, the transformed humans worked alongside thousands of other evolved species, each contributing their unique perspective to projects that spanned star systems. Through quantum communication networks that connected all evolved minds, she maintained contact with Earth, both the Earth that orbited Sol and the 17 other Earth-like worlds where traditionally human communities had been established. On Earth Prime, as the original world was now called, Dr. Park led the Global Research Council. Humanity there had advanced remarkably, but at their own chosen pace. They had developed faster-than-light communication, had begun to terraform Mars, and had established contact with dozens of other traditionally evolving species. The interesting thing, Dr. Park's voice came through the quantum link during their weekly check-in, is that both groups are becoming something greater than what we were. We're just taking different paths to get there. Sarah smiled, an expression that now involved changes in her electromagnetic field as much as her facial features. Any regrets about your choice? None. You? None. Through the sensor networks of the Galactic Collective, Sarah could perceive both futures simultaneously. The transformed humans were helping to build technologies that could reshape reality itself, participating in projects to nurture new civilizations and explore the deepest mysteries of existence. The traditionally human communities were developing their own wonders, art that captured the beauty of slower growth, philosophies that honored the value of limitation, and a determination to prove that not all advancement required fundamental change. Both groups remained human at their core. Both groups had found ways to transcend their original limitations. They had simply chosen different definitions of transcendence. Marcus Washington, now 17, split his time between both worlds. As one of the few who could exist comfortably, in either state he served as an ambassador between the two branches of humanity. "My grandma was right," he told Sarah during one of his visits to the New Horizon. "We did remember how to change, but she was also wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "She thought we'd all become the same kind of butterfly. Turns out the universe has room for lots of different kinds of butterflies." Sarah looked out at the stars, billions of them, each surrounded by worlds where different species were making their own choices about growth and change. Some chose transformation, others chose preservation. Most, like humanity, chose both. The signal that had once threatened extinction had become humanity's greatest gift. The recognition that survival wasn't about avoiding change or embracing it completely. It was about having the wisdom to choose the kind of change that honored what you were while becoming what you were meant to be. In her expanded awareness, Sarah could perceive the alien species that had sent the original signal. They were ancient, wise, and had long ago learned that the universe was most beautiful when it contained infinite varieties of consciousness, infinite ways of being intelligent, infinite approaches to the question of what it meant to exist. They had never intended to destroy humanity. They had only intended to offer humanity the chance to discover what it could become. The SOS that had awakened humanity's hidden giants had never been a call for help after all. It had been a call to greatness, and humanity, in all its chosen forms, had answered.